we're slowly evolving as we do each one. And so I have wonderful partners, like where we had it hosted this time. Um, I've been selling my art in that space for a long time now. So it's like really
Mhm.
full circle for us because we're able to do these events and activate. But yeah, it's cool. It's a good problem to have when we're starting to overflow. And so we made it work. Like we had like 25 people laying down on yoga mats and like every part of the floor was taken up, which was
Wow. What
um,
was the studio at? Like, what type of studio thing? Was it a yoga studio? Is that the?
actually, no. So I actually have been using coffee shops to do my activations.
No
So
way.
yeah, it's a really good size, like a pretty large venue for being a coffee shop. You can hold at least 35, 40 people sitting down in there. It's in Normal Heights. It's called Good Omen. So
Oh, that
um,
sounds familiar.
yeah,
Have you done that, or did you have to like? Did you already know the owner or manager of that shop, or were you just like, I like this venue, and I'm gonna, try hey mistering my way to a decision maker?
Well, in terms of how I work with venues in general, it kind of
Yeah.
each one has its own little story, but this one's really really nice because I know this owner from a different coffee shop that he's had in Ocean Beach, and we met a little over 2 years ago. I walked in and asked if he'd be open to displaying my art, and he was super into it. And so I had my art in his original shop for a long time. And then he added a location about like 9 months ago. He took over an existing coffee shop and like retrofitted it. And then once I saw the space, I realized how great of an opportunity there would be to actually use it for events and everything. So I'm the first one that he's ever done this with as far as like activating the space and letting other people come in to use it. But
Right.
yeah, we've been doing now monthly events there, and next
Yeah.
month or this month we'll be doing two workshops, which will be really cool. So it's been a
Wow.
nice journey.
That's super cool. I love that because obviously we that's like another intersection that I didn't quite realize. I knew you were in the mushroom space and the wellness space, and you're but the coffee shop overlap is another fun little thing because I'm always trying to um, get into new venues that will serve our product because I think it really like highlights what makes our product good. We do like mushroom coffee and then those powders.
Mhm.
And it's nice when you can have it with like steamed milk and some latte art and stuff like
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? But it's hard getting to those decision makers and getting you spend a lot of time running around trying to get a yes or a no. Like you're like, I'm fine with whatever, but just let me know so I can move on.
Yeah.
um, that's super cool. Let me introduce you just so that everyone knows who you are. So I'm Jordan Ryan, and welcome to the Mind Body Mushroom, the podcast where we explore the magic of mushrooms, adaptogens, and all ways that you can naturally upgrade your health and well-being. Each week, we break down the science behind medicinal mushrooms, ancient healing wisdom, and share some truly mind-blowing stories of transformation. Whether you're looking for sharper mental clarity, better health, or deeper connection with yourself, you're exactly where you need to be. My guest today is Sarah Muzquiz. Sarah is a multifaceted leader, blending her expertise as a tech leader, artist, and philanthropic community builder. With a successful career in strategic partnerships, Sarah has seamlessly transitioned her skills into building a thriving creative brand. Her brand, Fungi, is a beloved staple in the San Diego community, known for its unique charm and artistic flair. Sarah leads transformative workshops and community events, fostering connection and creativity. A passionate philanthropist, she works closely with Rady Children's Hospital through her Healing Through Art initiative, bringing joy and comfort to patients through creative expression. In addition to her artistic endeavors, Sarah runs a creative activation business, curating immersive experiences for corporate functions, music events, and festivals. With a deep commitment to community and a passion for blending creativity with impact, Sarah is redefining what it means to lead with heart and innovation. Thanks for coming on the show today, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great intro.
Yeah, AI is incredible. No, but I mean, really, you're incredible because hitting all these different aspects of art and community and philanthropy and entrepreneurship. I feel like those are very oftentimes like disparate parts of people's brains, or they're different types of people. You know what I mean? There's, the giver that like isn't concerned about money in any case, that they're just constantly giving out. Or then there's like the starving artist, or then there's like the hustle bro entrepreneur, and it's not often that you find somebody that can kind of weave through all these different facets of their, personality and do it in an authentic way. So it's super cool. It's a pleasure to speak with you and have you on the show.
Thank you. That's really nice of you. Yeah, I'm excited to dive in and share more about my story. So my time is yours.
Yeah, awesome. So why don't we start, closer to the beginning? If your childhood or growing up is relevant in any of this, like we can go there, or we can start kind of wherever you feel comfortable, where you feel it's like a nice, this is when it all began kind of place.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be honest, like every day I'm still like trying to figure out my story just because there's so many aspects of it. But I would say that like what's most relevant to today and what I'm doing, you and I met through an event, like, and I was just walking up to you and networking with you and figuring out what you do. I really liked your product. And that has a nice lay into like in like, connection to like what I'm doing because essentially like, we uh over my lifetime, like I have been, I appreciate what you're doing with your product because it's a natural brand, right? And you guys are using the earth to help heal people, and I have a lot of that relates a lot to like what I've experienced through my life because I was at a young age exposed to mental health very, very early on. I was raised by my grandparents, and my birth mother was bipolar and had challenges throughout her life, and I saw her go through her own journey with like prescription medications and just like all the things that comes with, her challenges. And it was something since a very young age that I always told myself, I said, I don't want to I don't want to succumb to what society puts on us. Like, I don't want to let drugs, alcohol, pharmaceuticals, all the things that we sometimes just are told to use or taught to use. As a young girl, I always knew that like there was more out there than just that. And that's an important, I think, thing to start with as far as like how I've gotten to where I am today, because I was one of those kids at a young age that was diagnosed with ADD, which really at the time, my acting out was a lot because of my environment, not because I was, genetically an ADD child. Also, like ADD isn't really a genetic thing. They're doing so many studies now where they're seeing it's a lot of environment that can induce those symptoms. And so, I was medicated very early on, and since a very young age, I had an issue with it. Like it never felt right. Even when I was in high school, I would pretend like I was taking my medicine when I wasn't. Like my parents didn't know, and my whole life I just knew like I am not going. Like deep down, I knew I didn't need what I was being given, like the prescriptions and all that kind of stuff, and I knew that there was so much more out there that could help me that, didn't need to be that complicated. So that's why I really love what you're doing because adaptogens and functional mushrooms and all the other types of things that we have that our earth gives us like are truly opportunities for us to, like utilize and heal in natural ways. And that's a huge part of my own journey. So as I've gotten older, I've taken a lot of I've taken like I've taken it very seriously in terms of really staying away from like the pharmaceuticals and like the prescription medications to like help myself. And I've leaned on like alternative medicine and other things out there that, I'm sure we'll dive into. But it all together, fast forward to now, as far as like my artistic journey, the creative journey I've been on, and then my professional side of things where I work in tech, it all comes together. It all has a nice intertwining, because at the end of the day, like I've come to learn how I have the ability to teach others through my own experiences. So whether it's me getting involved in the corporate world, teaching and showing people how, art can be healing and how we can have other ways to utilize our brain besides just go, go, go mentality all the time, which I used to be like. Um, and then when you have like the artist, like the creative entrepreneur, like the other side of things where, we're like, my goal is to inspire others to show like you can make it, you can do it. Like we're not limited. We just because we're an artist doesn't mean we can't do business, So like everything that I've kind of done, which we'll dive more into, but it all has an intertwining, it all has to do with each other. Today I consider myself a creative entrepreneur, just like with the different businesses I've been starting and the things I've been getting into. At the core, I'm an engineer. I'm an engineer by trade. It's just the way
Mm-hmm.
my brain works and how I,
Fun.
but I take that and I apply it to my, when I take the left side and right side of my brain, I do everything I can to really bring those together and bridge the gap to get, and it's been really, it's been an interesting experience because a lot of people are siloed with the way that they approach life. Um, but yeah, that's like kind of just like a general overview. I guess like specifically, I'm from San Diego. I've lived here for 3 years, and I, at the moment right now, have been solely focused on building my business. I left my full-time job about 6 months ago, and I've been kind of going back and forth on if I'm gonna stay full-time entrepreneur or if I'm gonna go back in to work. We'll see. But because I really have developed a beautiful network there as well. But
Mm.
that's kind of where I'm at today. So I've been building out my community events that I've been doing, which I'll share more about, my workshops. I've been working with an art coach now where she's coming in and helping me bring a lot of structure to what I'm doing, even
Cool.
though as much as I want to say I have it figured out, I don't. So yeah, just been really like taking this time off to heal and to evolve and to start going after the things that have kind of just been brainchilds that I haven't done anything with. So it's been a really cool journey in the last 6 months, and happy to double click on anything that you want to talk
Yeah,
about.
that's super cool. There's a lot there I want to dive in on, but just kind of off the bat, one thing that you said that I've been thinking about lately is that kind of left and right brain connection, and how, like, from a society standpoint, like, we are so left brained. Is that the one? That's like the logic?
Logic, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like it has diminished the role and importance, or society sort of acts as though creativity and that right brain function is like, it's fine, it's cute, like, if you have some time to kill, like, why not play guitar or do something like that. And it has, I think, completely overemphasized that, like, logic, ration, ego, all of the stuff that is like very left brain. And I think that is like part of our societal sickness that has kind of created so many mental health problems, and then we have a healthcare system, that's, you show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome, and the incentives are to get people hooked on medications early
Yeah.
and then just keep them on there for life. And hey, if you get side effects from those medications, well, good news, we got medications for those too. And so one question that I had, actually, that when you said early in life you kind of knew that there was another way, was that from environment or exposure? Like, did your parents kind of, or was it just something you kind of like intuited?
That's such a good question. Thank you for asking that. I don't think about this often, but I know inherently that like what it came down to was I saw the a lot of those adverse effects that would come from taking, being prescribed medication. So for example, my birth mom growing up, they had her in trials very early, like when she was younger. At the time too, when she was like she got diagnosed later in her life, but up until they were able to diagnose her, they didn't really know what was going on. And a lot of that too happened before I was even born. And so I was like raised in this environment where my mom, like we knew she had a challenge, like we knew she was being, she was challenged mentally, but for a long time they didn't know what was going on. So I saw what went down when the doctors would just prescribe and prescribe and prescribe. And I'm not going to say that, like, I'm not going to blame necessarily her state on all of that, but that had so much to do with her continuous downfall, unfortunately, because they weren't able to, it wasn't a matter of fixing it. It was just a
Right.
matter of medicating and just
Right.
finding a way to put a band-aid on it. And so so that ties into my own personal experience because when I was very young, we were they had me evaluated in like second grade because I was like not acting out, but like I would not wait and raise my hand and blurt an
Mm-hmm.
answer out too quick, or my brain
Mm-hmm.
was moving too fast. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I was really good at math and science, but I couldn't figure out how to sit there and read. And it was like this, like, just typical story of what you hear now of all these kids, who are
Totally.
just kind of like put into a box at a young age. And so, the doctors, when I was getting evaluated early on, said just put her on Ritalin. Like, she just needs Ritalin, she'll be fine. My parents were sick to their stomach over it because they had just gone through this with their own daughter. And my parents, who were my grandparents, like it pained them to have to like put, my mom on medications like they did. And like to this day, like it's still a very heavy topic for us. And so for them, like I think seeing, having to do that with me, it was a really uh painful thing for them as well. It was just like this continuation that they had to endure. And with that, they they took it up. It was like honestly, I owe my grandparents so much because it
Mm.
was them who decided to start putting me into therapy at a very young age. And they said,
Interesting.
maybe this they listen to doctors like, oh, we'll put her on this medication if we have to. But they early on, they went so far out of their way to figure out all the different other types of treatments
Really?
out there that they can explore versus just the medication. So I was doing therapy at a very young age. They put me with tutors. Like I was working with like academic tutors, um, like starting in like fourth grade, very, very young. And I'm grateful because like I had a family that was willing to spend the money to do this and like
Right.
look for the alternatives. But I would consider, like, tutoring and having hands-on support for your child and all these other avenues. These are supplemental. These are alternative ways to like help someone. But I never technically went off the medication. They didn't know for a while that like I was faking taking it.
Mm.
But it really, at the end of the day, that's like a long version of the story. But at the end of the day, like I knew inside of me that I didn't need medication. Like it was
Mhm.
just my intuition. Like I was
Mm.
being given a pill and it felt wrong. Like when I would
Right.
take medicine, my body didn't feel right. My mind was racing. The level, like I felt like I was literally on a drug. Like because it's an amphetamine. And someone who needs a medication like that, not discounting it, because like I know that it helps certain people in this world that really do need something like that. For someone like me, I knew deep down I didn't need it. And a lot of what I had been showing as far as symptoms go, quote unquote, I now know as an adult that a lot of it was trauma based. And
Mm.
a lot of it was coming from my environment very young. And if you were to interact with me today as an adult who doesn't take the medication anymore, it's been about a year and a half to 2 years almost that I've been fully off, which is like a very hard thing to do when you're an adult and you've used it your whole life.
Totally.
Now I feel like I'm the quote unquote normal human I was supposed to be
Mm.
that they wanted me to be back then. Like, and it's
That's so
a lot of
interesting.
that's because I've healed other things in my life and
Right.
it's allowed me to calm down and relax and like focus and like, figure myself out more versus just medicating to medicate.
Yeah.
So,
Well. Oh,
yeah.
sorry. No, I was just gonna say one thing that makes me think of is that like you had to do the work. You know what I mean? Like there's the nice about medications is like you can chalk it up as kind of a quick fix. It's like, hey, I'm having these issues. I don't know why, but life's really hard. Let me talk to my doctor, the expert, and see what they have. And they're like, for sure, as the expert, I'm going to, prescribe you this. And, you're going to get some marginal benefit from it. And like you say, like there are absolutely people who benefit from these things, long term. I think that a lot of them could probably benefit long term without it, but it's like you said, you have to really dig deep and see like what is the root of this problem that I'm having, and where's it stemming from, and how do we treat these underlying concerns, and therapy is going to take a lot more time than just popping a pill, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, doing that work, it has led you to a place now where, like you just said, like I feel like this is the person that they were trying to make me be, and I was able to get there by doing that internal work, not just by, whereas maybe if you had just kept listening to your doctor, taking your medication, and then you're having trouble sleeping because you're on 40 milligrams of Adderall a day. And so then they're like, don't worry, we got, Ambien, for you at night. And now you're just, this pill makes you smaller, this pill makes you large. And that's, becomes your reality.
Yeah.
So
You make
that's
a really
awesome.
good point. It's like that concept of like treating symptoms versus getting to the root of it. That's how our country's run. Like it's I have a very like challenging relationship with the healthcare system in the US, not only because of what I saw my mom go through, but what I was put through at a young age, but then also just I've had injuries throughout the years too that
Mhm.
you know, I've just like, for example, they wanted to prescribe me pain medication right away. I had
Mhm.
a neck injury from a car accident, and they were like, "Yeah, just start taking these pain meds. You'll feel better. Get the shot. It'll make it'll numb the nerves. This and that." And I was like, "Hell no, I'm not doing that. Like, that's not going to fix what the problem is." Now, I'm not fixed now. I'm not like perfect, but
Right.
I made the conscious decision to go down the alternative path and
Mhm.
work with physical therapists, massage, do all the other things, exercise. I'm not perfect and I still deal with challenges, but if I had started medicating right after that, I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am today.
No. Are you familiar with Channel 5? They're like a YouTube channel, but they make like documentaries. It's just like these kind of guys that go around different spots. It's like a YouTube thing. But
Yeah.
anyway, with all the Luigi Mangione stuff, there was a big Free Luigi protest or something outside in New York. And so Channel 5 was there and they're interviewing some people. And there was one guy who had a very similar back injury situation where he had to get like a spinal fusion. He had actually two. He had to do a neck and a low back, and was just talking through the process. And it's exactly kind of what you said. He was like, here's the pills. You start taking the pills, and because of how the healthcare industry works, like you can't just go to a spinal specialist and say I messed up my back. You have to go to your primary care. It might take you a couple weeks to get into that primary care. You see your primary care, they see you for 6 minutes and go, oh yeah, you need a spinal specialist. You're like, thanks doc. And then they put in a referral. 4 months later you get a surgery, or you get your consult with the spinal specialist that then wants to try more conservative treatment for a little bit. And so before you know it, on average, this is the statistic, 6 to 9 months between an injury before you can even get to a surgeon, assuming that surgery is even what you would want to do. And I would advise against it. But, and in that interim period, it's exactly what you said. It's pain pills. Here's the pain medication. This will get you, through it. All of a sudden you're taking, 40, 50 milligrams of oxy a day, just to get through the night. And, that is the way it goes. You have to, it's called the alternative because it's alternative to the mainstream way of treating that. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of insane. Yeah, so I don't blame you for having kind of a love-hate relationship. I wanted to talk a little bit, if you're cool with this, but you mentioned some trauma and that was kind of like what you had to unpack. Do you want to go into that?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to like dive in to help like tell the story too, or like help shape up the story more myself. But yeah,
Cool. Yeah.
when I was a really young baby, like I think as I was an infant, I was going through some medical issues. I was having like seizures at a really young age, really high fevers, and it was leading to me being hospitalized.
Mm.
And my grandfather put me up in a hospital in Los Angeles. I was born in Vegas. My birth mom lived in Vegas with my dad at the time, and so they brought me to LA to get me good treatment in near them, near my grandparents where they lived. So my grandfather was with me in the hospital for like 40 days straight, and I survived and I was okay. But then at that point, they realized how hard it was going to be for me to be raised in the environment my mom was in because my birth mom was not able to support herself. She was, without getting too into the weeds and turning this into a sob story, but she was like a typical case of someone that had a mental illness that was untreatable. And so it led to so many different things. She was put on different medications that didn't help her, that caused other problems. She had multiple personality disorder, a thyroid disorder, And so throughout her life, I mean, she was an extremely intelligent woman. She was one of the smartest people I know, photographic memory. Like,
Mm.
she was the kind of girl who went to class once a year to take the test, got the A, but
Uh,
never showed up, ditched school. Like, she was this hyper genius too, which was, I think, almost to her like almost
yeah.
to like not good for her in a way
Yeah.
because it
Totally.
she weaponized a lot of it, unfortunately, growing up.
Mm.
So I wasn't raised in the home with her, but
And
I
was
was
this your
raised without her.
grandparents' like
Daughter,
child?
my
Like
grandparents' daughter.
your
Yeah.
grandparents' daughter? Okay, sorry. I just wanted to
Yeah. No, no,
make
that's
sure.
good
Yeah.
clarification. Yeah. So my mom's parents, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was raised starting at a very young age. After I was sick, my dad, my grandfather, I know it's confusing, but I call him my dad.
Hmm.
He made the decision then that I needed to stay with them because they didn't want to put me back into a chaotic household. And at the time, my mother and my father, my birth parents, were getting a divorce. So my dad was also kind of a bad news bear. He wasn't the best and got himself in trouble. He was really young. They were both very young. Like my birth mom, I think she was 23 when she had me. So that was like that's the kind of trauma that I know I was experiencing this as as a young baby. Like that's and they're doing studies now where like you can even experience trauma in the womb, and
Mm.
that can affect you as you grow up and how you develop. But that was like kind of what started things, and then through my life, um, I was always like feeling okay because I had this mother and father figure, my grandparents, but there was always that it was never conventional. It was like
Hmm.
confusing to people. And, I
Hmm.
always had to explain to people why I was being raised by my grandparents. And my birth mom would show up every couple months. We'd hear from her. She'd show up at the door and like cause a problem and asking my parents for money all the time. Or, she had times in her life where she was on the streets because she couldn't get housing. She would cause problems where she would live. I mean, she did, she committed fraud. There was just a lot of things like throughout her life that she was doing that created problems for our family. And my grandparents were so supportive no matter what. Like since day one, they always would help her. And I think there's a lot of our family history that we don't need to get into, but there's
Yeah.
definitely ways I think that like they could have helped her where there could have been more structure in the household. They could have gotten her the right types of therapies and stuff like that. But this is 30, 40 years ago. Like this
Yeah.
stuff didn't exist.
Right.
So mental health was so new still then too. And a lot of it, like if you showed mental health signs, they'd either put you in like a mental institution or you'd be on your own with like brand new medications that no one had done enough testing on. So
Wow.
and this was during like the 80s and the 90s. So like, you
Right.
know, it was just it was just a really like tumultuous, I guess, like upbringing in terms of all the peripherals for me. Like
Yeah.
my mother and father themselves, my grandma and grandpa who raised me, like provided me a beautiful life. They put me in wonderful schools. Like we were raised I was raised in Los Angeles. Like I was very, very like lucky in so
Hmm.
many ways because if I had been raised by my birth mom, my life would be very different right now.
Right.
And so
Right.
every day I'm very thankful. But,
Yeah.
there were issues between my grandparents and their relationship and not getting along all the time. And it was like a lot of like just, what it felt like at a young age was like I was kind of doing the parenting at times because like
Mm.
I would show up to a situation like very logical and like see things right from wrong and
Mm.
know that like there was always a better answer or the way like, one quick example, birth mom would come to the house, ask my parents for money, dad would say no, my grandma would go slip her a 20. So it was like that kind of stuff, like a divided
Mhm.
household. And the mental health thing just it caused a lot of like stress and like challenge in my own family. Like part of my family didn't talk to each other because of everything that was going down. And so, I was just raised in this like household where um let's just say my life wasn't like my friends was. Like,
Sure.
I had just like a very unconventional situation at a young age that I had to learn how to like process on my own, starting very young. So it really had this like heavy, I guess, like weight over me for a long time growing up. I was embarrassed for a long time that my grandparents were raising me. Like I didn't like talking about it. I found out I had like a birth sister that was adopted a year
Wow.
before me,
Wow.
um, and found her myself, and she happened to go to the same high school as me, which was like
What?
crazy. So like I don't know, maybe from the outside people are like, "Oh, that just sounds like a lot of, that sounds like a miracle or whatever it is." But like a lot of the stuff was pretty traumatic. Like it was just stuff that like no one sat me down and was like, "Hey, Sarah, like this is
Right.
why you're being raised the way you are." Like this is, it wasn't like I think my parents just did what they could. And
Yeah.
like they did their best because they had so much they had to deal with, but of course, it leads to its own things on its
For
own.
sure. And, and kids are so like resilient and adaptable
Yeah.
that like you can raise a kid in a truly fucked up like environment, and that is just normal for the child, you know what I mean? And so like it's only until by comparison that they're getting some perspective to be like, oh wait, you're not like your family's not like my family, like what's going on. And I think the other kind of point that brings up, and this is not to minimize or mitigate anything that you have gone through, but I think what you were able to identify early that other people maybe aren't is that this is trauma. Like, yes, this is my normal, but like, there's something again, if you're intuiting it or what, but you knew that like something about this is not right, or it's not like the healthiest that it could be. And I think so many people like are dealing or have dealt with trauma on some level as a kid. It doesn't have to be like abuse or sexual abuse or something like that. It can just be, it can be a lot subtler, and it has ripple effects that reverberate throughout your life and kind of bubble up in different ways. And until you kind of, like you said, do that, doing therapy, doing kind of the deep work that allows you to say, hey, maybe I'm connecting dots now that aren't obvious, but it's relevant.
You're nailing it. I think that's too what's really interesting because, like, to be honest with you, my whole life I grew up and I just thought of it all as normal. Like, it was
Yeah.
just normal to me. I would say my real healing journey started probably about 3 years ago. Um, and it was because of a very like traumatizing thing we went through. My dad got really sick, which we haven't touched on yet. My
Hmm.
grandfather, who raised me, he faced two life-threatening health conditions within 9 months: heart
Oh
failure
my god.
and then an intestine obstruction. So that's what I think, like, what's even more interesting to your point, where like you can have this subtle trauma through life too, where you're just like, we're just taught it's okay, it's fine. You know, like for example, like a baby can or a kid can fall and hurt themselves and the parent just goes, no, you're fine, get up, versus holding the child and helping them process that emotion. Like we are learning now like how
Hmm.
serious that type of stuff is
Interesting.
if we're not addressing it really, really like early on. And so I think now it's interesting because as an adult, it took this really serious life altering moment or moments for me with my grandfather where we almost lost him twice, for me to really shake out all those mini moments of trauma that led through my life that
Hmm.
built up onto each other, that I just always told myself I'm fine, and I'm like, oh, I'm fine. Like, look how I turned out compared to everyone else, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
that
I could
was
be
a real
so much
moment.
more screwed up. Like I
Yeah,
must be
exactly.
good.
Like, what I would tell myself. And then when I had that adult trauma, like that we had to go through as a family, it brought so much up for me from my childhood that I would have
Hmm.
never probably otherwise felt. And that was when the healing journey really started for me, because I realized, like, whoa, like not only do I need to figure out how to like grow and like evolve and heal from what just happened with my grandfather, but I also now have to kind of address all this other stuff in me that I didn't know was really affecting who I am as a person today.
Right.
So that's really where like the healing started. But to your point, like those subtle points of trauma through our life, if we can't address that and soothe and heal and find healthy ways to find peace with it, like it's going to continue to just build onto itself. And as we get older, it's going to manifest in other ways.
100%. It's really interesting. So I have a lot of friends that I've talked to, uh, special operations veterans who have sought psychedelic therapy to, kind of heal PTSD and various forms of, depression, alcohol abuse, whatever, just stuff where you're like, I'm not, like, I don't know what happened. I get out of the military, I was this super high achiever, elite, crushing it. And now I'm really struggling at putting my life together. And so, one thing that was really interesting to me, because some of these guys have, seen like very serious combat, have had very traumatic experiences from that perspective, but they'll go and do an ayahuasca ceremony and, like, to the man, come back and be like, I was unpacking childhood trauma. It was like the childhood trauma is what brought them to the military in the first place and put that chip on their shoulder so that they were going to be the biggest, best, and baddest, and went over. So it's like it's not oftentimes like the trauma from war. It's how whatever you dealt with as a child brought you to a place where you would experience this trauma from war. And then, there's also a bunch of like physiological stuff from like traumatic brain injury, blast exposure, stuff that we're kind of like, we know so much more about it. But even like 10 years ago, it was, mental health was purely viewed as a psychological, condition, not something that could literally be wrong with your brain. So yeah, it's super true.
That's a really good segue too, just because I know that like that was something we wanted to talk about, but psychedelics like has been a part of my healing journey. And I I have to say, like, I don't know what, your colleagues have gone through. Obviously, I only know my own story, but to be honest, like a lot of like what I've, I guess, reached for, quote unquote, has been self-taught or like it came from this place of like I know something's quote unquote not right with me. Like I know that this has all existed. And when I got shook up with my family, with my dad getting sick, it made me realize like, whoa, I need to really take this into like I need to take this seriously. Like I can't keep just like shoving this under the rug and suppressing. Yeah. So psychedelics were a really big part of my healing journey. Have been, to be honest. But what's really cool about it is like it I was always scared of doing like anything that could potentially flip a switch because of the mental health that runs in my family. And so I've always been very like careful with that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So my only experience with it is that has only been like my in a microdose format, but you're saying, your friend has done ayahuasca and people, going through that, facing that trauma from when you were younger, even though maybe being in the military is what, you know, the things that happened then are what like maybe drove the desire or the need or the realization to go and do the work. And then now you're
Yeah.
doing work from when you were like 2 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old, whatever. Like it's all intertwined. It's all like, it's not siloed
Mm-mm.
healing. Like healing is not a siloed process. We are, as humans, are complex beings, and our brains are a perfect example that everything's intertwined. And so, just because like my dad getting sick, when I say I'm in a healing journey, my healing journey has been to cover my whole life. But that one thing, that moment is what really shook me
Yeah.
to actually realize that I needed to do the work. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I thought the parallel is like, it was your grandpa's sickness that was sort of like the traumatic war situation. It's
That's
the
kind of what I
thing
was
that you're
trying to.
like, yeah,
They're
yeah,
not
no, no.
the same, but I don't
It
want to
is.
downplay anyone's experience.
No,
But, you know,
Sam,
that
not at all. I think what's important. It's not downplaying it at all. I think it's showing that trauma is trauma is trauma is trauma,
yeah.
and there's ranking someone's trauma is like, oh, that's not as bad as so and so. Is like that's not. We all have different compositions. We all have different propendency to oh, I can handle this, or I can't, or I'm more emotional in this sense. I'm more, we all deal with things in different ways. So it's like you could have two completely the same trauma to two different people and it affect them in different ways, and two different traumas that affect them in the same way. So I
Yeah.
think that no, you're not downplaying at all, but everything you said makes a ton of sense. So now, kind of segueing into your career a little bit and how wellness and activism kind of became part of what you were doing, especially as an engineer. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So it's an interesting, like, to be honest, to this day I still haven't figured out like the best way to explain it all because it's just there's a lot going on, but in a good way. So my career specifically as an engineer, like I went to school, I studied industrial technology, which was an applied engineering type of role. What is interesting about that though is that I always loved working with my hands and I always loved like tinkering. And since a young age, my grandfather had me going to like the Home Depot weekends and like, being in like I was doing the equivalent of like Girl Scouts at the time when I was younger, like building rocket ships. Like it was for science kids and like
Cool.
doing really cool, fun, like experiments and just stuff that required what I describe as like more tinkering versus like the 2D artist who's painting or, whatever it is. And so, in my career, I have found myself in like the partnerships world, which is where you really bridge like tech, humans, connections. Like I didn't want to be an engineer that sat behind the computer after I graduated. I loved human interaction and I loved community and building relationships. My grandfather was a master networker growing up. He has instilled a lot of what I do today. There's influence from him. He was very involved in his community, an entrepreneur, networking, all the things. So I kind of learned a lot of that from him and combined my technical skill set with that and realized, okay, partnerships make sense because like I love people, I love solving problems, whether they're human problems or technical problems.
Mhm.
And so that's just like kind of where I've evolved in my career. So I've been able to kind of scratch a few different itches in terms of like using my right brain and my left brain like in my job. But to be honest, it's probably the least interesting thing that I'm doing right now because like it's black and white. Like I work for I now I'm consulting part-time and I work for a few
Cool.
different companies doing go-to-market consulting work. But to be honest with you, the creative side of me is something that I actually like suppressed for a long time when I was building my career. So like I didn't tap back into my creativity for at least 10 years over,
Mhm.
since I graduated college to now. And in college, I was doing a lot of fun little projects. I was upcycling clothing and I was, I had all these different little brands that I was building and like would sell locally of like jewelry or whatever it was at the time. But the skill around like beading specifically, I learned at a very young age. And
Mhm.
art for me was like building things and creating things was a very therapeutic thing at a very young age. Like
Mhm.
I learned the feeling that it would give me, like how it would help me super young. And I would kind of
Mhm.
like zone out with those types of activities at a young age. So fast forward to now, when my dad got sick, I tapped back in to some of
Mhm.
that stuff that I used to do when I was younger. That in and of itself was extremely healing for me. And so that like getting back into that artistic side of me and the creative side, that's now what's really evolved to what I'm doing today, where
Mhm.
I'm I have like my sun catcher and plant charm business, which is just more of like a trinket business that I've created handmade art and handmade like 3D pieces that I sell. But then that's evolved now to workshops. So what I'm doing in my
Mhm.
workshops is I'm combining wellness modalities with the art. Um, because again, all inspired by my own journey, like sound healing, breath work, meditation, all those things have really helped me through my journey. And I realized like, well, if we just combine everything like I've been doing through my life, maybe we can inspire others to find other ways to heal as well. And so, we've been having these containers now, these in-person workshops, and furthermore, there's the philanthropic aspect of it. So, like the art we make for ourselves, we make an additional piece, whatever it is we're making in our workshop, and
Mhm.
we donate it back to the children's hospital to give to the patients as gifts or, whatever it is. So, eventually, I want to start bringing the experiences to those
Yeah,
environments as well. But
totally.
yeah, like it's all evolving. Like I'm still in that startup mode, so there's a lot going on.
Let me ask you a question. Out of your opinion, I guess, what do you think is therapeutic about tinkering and making stuff with your hands? Like what do you think is happening that makes it heal on a psychological and and or physical level?
I think it's like, I think for everyone it's different. And honestly, this is actually something I've considered like going to school for and like learning more about because I've been able, I feel like I'm the case study, but I'm not the
Yeah,
one that studied to like lead the case study. I just
sure.
did it. I learned by doing. But what I could tell you from my own experience is that there's a lot of strength and value in putting your phone away, focusing on one thing that you're enjoying, that you're passionate about, and disconnecting from all the different distractions that we have in our life and just focusing on one thing. Like I don't know like the scientific reasoning behind how that helps someone, but what I do know for sure is that sitting on my phone and scrolling for hours doesn't help me.
Yeah, it makes you feel worse for sure.
Feel worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think just like they do say that especially with AI now being so prominent and such a big thing throughout our like common world, I guess, like not just in the tech space or wherever it used to be housed. AI is becoming so just integrated into everyone's daily life where even now I think it's even more important that we use our hands and that we do something to disconnect because our creativity and like our ability to create as humans it's like we're born with that. And
Yeah, right.
just going back to our roots is a very healing thing too.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it's with specifically that there's kind of two things going on, and one of them leads into some of the other things that I have engaged in for my own healing, and also, for the community. But I think flow state is a huge part of it. Like our brain wants to be in this sort of like alpha brainwave, like you're focused on a thing, and it's mindfulness essentially. It's like why everyone does all of this stuff is it silences the monkey mind and the chattering that left brain voice that is like, you have stuff to do. What do you do? What are you're letting your parents down, or do you have enough money for bills? When are you going to do all this stuff? And you know what I mean? So getting into that flow state, I think, is part of it. And then like you said it when you said, it's very human. I think that humans, part of our nature is to create. It's to and creation can be interpreted in a wide variety of ways, but I mean, if you look at some of the oldest civilizations that we know of, there's drawing, and there's oral traditions, there's singing, there's chanting, percussion, getting into like that, creating vibration and frequency. So I think there's something that is very human about the act of creating. And we're in a society where now, like, literally computers can basically just do your work for you. So yeah, like you said, it's even more important that to not have that sort of like psychological crisis, that you are touching back to your roots and getting in tune with what it is to be human.
Yeah, I know for a fact like there is science behind it in terms of like dopamine and like what it does for you when you're like the different hormones that are released when you're in that flow state.
Sure.
And I know that like it's a proven thing. Art therapy is a huge industry that's like
Yeah.
continuing to grow. And even when I was younger, like some of this like that I learned was actually like in my therapy. So like a lot of it, like even though I don't know the science behind it, what I know is they were doing this kind of stuff with me very young.
Hmm.
Um, and I see the results that it's done
Yeah.
for me. And that to me is enough to know, like, okay, whatever this is, maybe I don't know it all yet, or I'm like gonna, maybe I'll learn about it soon if I go to school for it, but like I know it helps and I know it can't
Right.
harm you, right? So like why
Right.
not? Why not provide this to people?
Totally. That's the other huge part about it, is that like I think people like to compare, like, well, okay, well, how well does breath work in sound baths, or supplements like mushrooms or functional mushrooms, how does that compare to SSRIs, or some um, pharmaceutical intervention? And I think that's an okay thing to compare, but the other side of it that it's sort of leaving out is what are the side effects of drawing?
Nothing.
What, you know what I mean? Like, people were only kind of like, well, is drawing as good as SSRIs, or is it? I'm like, well, what about the side effects? And thinking about the downside of it. And a lot of these holistic modalities have such little risk associated with it, that why not try them? You know,
Right.
and a big thing for me, I mean, I sell, CBD and mushroom infused products, but I don't believe that there are silver bullets that you can, yeah, just do this and it's going to fix your problems. That's sort of the pharmaceutical approach to begin with.
Mhm.
The holistic approach is that you have to stack a lot of things. It's about, breath work and mindfulness and, getting in touch with your childhood trauma and art and, exercise, sunlight, getting outside, being a person that you see. Do you know what blue zones are? Have you heard of blue zones? So blue zones are areas, in the world that have, super high concentrations of octogenarians and like centarians, so people who live, super long. And they've sort of found like, well, what are these people doing? Is it like diet? And like, yeah, there's aspects of diet, like in Okinawa in Japan, they eat a lot of yams. In Sardinia, they eat a lot of oil, like olive oil and Mediterranean diet. But like, there's aspects there, but that's only a part of it. Sometimes a bigger part of it is connection. All of those people are somebody in their community. If they just died tomorrow, a bunch of people beyond their children are going to be affected by that because it's truly a community. And I think that that connection to other people and, finding your place in a community is also extremely human, but it's what keeps you not just like alive, but thriving. And I see that what you're doing a lot in your work.
I'm trying to. Yeah, that's I think the community aspect is a big piece of it. Like where that comes to play, like personally, I've been in San Diego now for a little over 2.5 years. And what I have found is it's been, San Diego's great because like there's so much to do and there's so much variety in what we can do here because of where we are. But I would say that, as far as finding like your soul people, I wouldn't say it's as easy as some other places I've lived.
Hmm.
But maybe that's just because it's my own experience. I've been like immersed in the music scene a lot, so I've been like, that's been I really enjoy going out and like watching live music or going to like EDM shows, but
Mm-hmm.
that's where I've met some people. But I've also like what I have found is I've met a lot of people in a lot of different, I guess, places or environments. And for me, like I went sober, like quote unquote sober. I
Hmm.
stopped drinking alcohol about a little over officially a year ago.
Wow.
And I think that was something that I started realizing like I'm having a hard time like connecting. Like I've found some soul people for sure, but I had been finding that it was hard for me to connect with certain people and feel like good about what we're doing and how we're connecting, if that makes sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
and I'm an artist. I'm a creative, and I think what I just found was like at the end of the day, like community is a very uplifting thing. It always has been for me. I've always been a very like social person that likes to have friends and go out and do things and be a part of something. But what I found was like, we it just how do I put this in like a non in a positive way? Like I felt like there's been a lot of siloed areas of San Diego that you can get
Mm.
involved in, but I wasn't finding the communities that have everything overlapping. Like the community where you can create and be artistic, but also like want to take care of your mental health and like
Right.
meditate and do a sound healing. And then, you don't have to be this like millionaire to like go cold plunge, right? Like you don't like so it was just like this thing where I felt like and there's like a little bit of an influencer scene in San Diego, which I think like has also had a little bit of like an influence on like not putting that down, but it's had an influence on like the type of events that I see that are being put out there.
Interesting.
And so what for me, what it's come back down to is like I just want to make really cool shit with
Hmm.
friends and connect with people and help people. Like that's really
Totally.
what it comes down to. And if
Totally.
I could use my story to help inspire and help others, then like why not? You know, that's kind of what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's there's one thing about kind of being an entrepreneur and being a leader is that sometimes you're gonna kind of walk to the beat of your own drum,
Mm,
and that's okay because you can create the community that you maybe aren't finding
hmm.
already exists out there, you know. And how long have you been doing like wellness type stuff like with your businesses in San Diego?
I've personally been involved in like the wellness modalities myself for a long time, but I started creating my events about a little under 6 months ago, so we're still pretty
Yeah,
new.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
it's pretty newer.
That's the other thing I would say too is that like it might just take a little time to kind of like find, you know, for those people to kind of come out and connect
Yeah.
because I've everything you're saying about San Diego is pretty true. There's so many different like little silos of you know, if you're into this sort of thing, if you're into this sort of thing, like there are a lot of those. But I have found like specifically in like the wellness, um, you know, health, but also like we're not like checking out from society and trying to just move to a co-op and you know like they're you know kind of having a foot in both worlds and like that wellness world but also like we live in the most expensive city like, on planet earth, you know, and so trying to kind of square that circle. I do think they exist, you know, not to diminish your experience at all, but I'm only saying that just to like don't lose hope. You know, I think they're there.
Definitely, like that is the thing. The more, so that to your exact point, like once I started doing my events and leading the healing through art events that I've been doing and stuff, doors have opened beyond. Like I met
Wow.
you and I've met other
Right.
people and to your point, the communities do exist. Like there are these communities that I'm finding now that want to like combine all the different modalities. But what I'm seeing though is that there isn't one specific collective or like group or whatever that's bringing all of it together, which like
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
not like I'm not some rocket science that's like cracking a code that no one's been able to figure out. Like but it is this thing of like I'm seeing a lot of like collectives that are
Yeah.
bringing in artistic, creative entrepreneurs, people like that, and have an art aspect in like their day retreats or whatever they're doing, and they have the meditation, the breath work, the yoga, the connecting, the community. But in my mind, like the art piece is like 10%.
Yeah.
So for me, what I'm bringing to this community is more like we're here to do 50-50. Like
Yeah.
art and the creativity is just as important as the sound healing or the breath work. And when we bring that together, we enter into a state ourselves that allows us to open up even more as an individual. We're in a heart space.
Right.
And that is like kind of where I'm going with this is like, I want to be able to like get people into that like really heart opening space. So whether or not they're meeting their best friend at this event, they're just feeling better
Yeah.
than they did coming into it. Which
Totally.
you do with like, you do with the wellness modalities. But what I will say is like I have experienced these wellness modalities in other venues.
Yeah.
I'm not like I get it. Content is important, but like when I see people doing the cold plunge and then like they're doing it just for the video, I'm like, are you really getting the most out of this or what? Like, what are we doing? Like,
So true.
and
Yeah.
at my events, we leave our phones at the door. We're not
Yeah.
using our phones, and everyone's down.
Right.
People are down. They're like, I don't need my phone. We're good. I have a photographer usually that just like takes some content for us, and that's it. You know,
Right.
so
Yeah. No, I think that's super true. It's like you know the term greenwashing, like you know where greenwashing is where you kind of like putting like the recycling symbol on your plastic item, but you can't actually recycle it. So it like looks like you're doing something really good for planet. I feel like I don't know what the term is, but it's like greenwashing for like health and wellness. Is that there's sort of this it's like wellness as brand, or wellness as like a trend, not necessarily wellness as like a thing to heal yourself. And that's kind of the like, take a selfie in the ice bath and go. I also think in San Diego, like you kind of hit it. There's a big influencer culture, because I think it seems like no one has a job in San Diego. Like somehow, like, you know what I mean? Like anywhere you go at any time, it's kind of busy. And so I think people do these remote type of work, building your own personal brands, whatever that entails. And in 2025, it's like if you want the algorithm to do anything, you have to constantly spam it with various forms of content. It's probably the area that I'm like the most bad at, because I consume social media, and like I get it, like I make social media, but like as soon as as soon as you're doing it for work, it like kind of just sucks the fun out of it. And you're like, damn, yeah, like it becomes like this vapid thing that you have to do that doesn't really capture the essence of what you're trying to go for.
Well, that's been my challenge. I will be honest with you, as I've been building out this business, I guess, for lack of better terms, like, which it's really not that, but it's been this like focus for me, ever since I left my full-time job.
Yeah.
It's like I'm supposed to be getting content all the time, and I'm like, this is now like becoming like it's not
Yeah.
fun for me. I'm like,
No.
I hate editing videos. I'm like already have such a uncomfortable, like I don't like my relationship with social media. Not that I overuse it or anything, but I don't like what it does for me, and I do
Yeah.
find myself scrolling when I don't want to be. And so I'm like, damn, like to make this thing a thing, like I'm supposed to be on social media. So it's this like conflicting, like, I don't know, relationship that I have for it.
No, totally. And honestly, that was kind of what got me into podcasting, because I have grown just so much as a person since about like 2015, maybe like around then. That's kind of when I kind of like started listening to podcasts more.
Yeah.
And I have a huge variety, all sorts of different subjects, and even like political leanings, like get information from all different, and it has made me just a better person, like a much more educated and just like worldly person. So I'm like, podcasts are a good thing, and I like what they do in terms of helping you learn about the world. Like your story is going to help somebody, it's going to help people, and this conversation that we're having is helping ourselves in our own sort of like personal way. And where for me, like where I kind of was trying to kill two birds with one stone was by doing podcasting. Maybe I can take one long form piece of content that I do enjoy having, like, this isn't miserable for me. I like that we're doing this. And then, there's a lot of software and stuff that can kind of chop it into shorter bits, and then you can repost those and now start building a brand around a message. And you building this subject matter expertise, people learn to trust you, they learn to know who you are. And that was sort of the angle because I'm the same way, man. I hate doing it. I don't want to make TikTok videos and then an Instagram this, and then or you spend a lot of money paying people to do it.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, if you crack the code at any point, let me know, because I'm in that predicament as we speak. So
yeah, don't hold your breath.
yeah.
um, so what's next for you? What's I want to hear about other events, or what do you got going, and what direction are you kind of trying to take Sarah Rose Creations in?
Yeah, so that's actually a great segue. So I'm currently rebranding, not rebranding, but I'd say like expansively launching like this umbrella, for a lack of better terms. So it's called Sarah Rose Creations, and essentially like it's gonna house Funky Fungi. So she's not necessarily going away, which is like the known plant charm business that I've had. But it's going to really just be all encompassing to all the things that I've been creating. So whether it's creating communities, whether it's creating experiences, like the art experiences, whether it's creating safe spaces for people to connect. I've been thinking about a podcast. I have all these ideas. I used to have a podcast. So I know how much work it takes, and I
Mm,
respect you for the hustle there because it can be it is a full-time job for many.
mm.
Um, but that is something that's in my mind. We'll see. But right now my focus is on really like getting the foundation like not finalized because you're never officially done with anything, but kind of starting to like shift in the standardizing realm. So like
Yeah.
I've proof of concept like I've proof of concepted like
Mhm.
lots of different things in the last 6 months, and I've decided that I really want to stick with the events. The events are something that have
Hmm.
been really amazing. These
Yeah.
workshops I've been hosting. So I'm gonna start getting more just not standardized, but I'm gonna like create my template so I can really start scaling that.
Yeah.
And eventually I want to take it to multiple cities.
Mhm.
We're gonna also tap into corporate. So we're gonna be providing these experiences for corporate settings where teams can do it as team building exercises. So that's really exciting. And then as an artist, like I'm gonna be pushing some of the limits for myself. So I want to start doing 2D art. I want to do art on a larger scale. So like imagine like large canvas art or bigger pieces. Like a lot of my stuff is disco tiled or like it's disco themed.
Sick.
So I want to do some bigger sculptures or stuff like that. So yeah, those are kinds of the things that are coming. Like this Healing Through Art series that I've been working on. We're doing our fourth one in 2 weeks. So I've been preparing for
Wow.
that.
Good for
I'm
you.
really excited. Yeah, thank you. So that's going to be kind of more of the baby that I focus on is like getting that more established. And then essentially I'm going to work on getting some just kind of like leads that I can bring on to the team from
Hmm.
different cities so then we can start
Yeah.
activating it in other places too.
Yeah, that's super smart. I think I mean you're an engineer. You get it. But the
Mhm.
standardization of processes, creating processes like that is so crucial to scaling, and it's one of the areas that I think a lot of creators and entrepreneurs kind of struggle with because the way their head works is different than the way other people's, and that's why they're in the place that they are. But sometimes communicating their vision and having other people like row in the same direction is a real challenge. And that is essentially what scaling is. So being able to create systematize things and do it such that you can hire somebody on, they know how it's going to work, they know how it's going to go. So I think that's super smart. And the other thing that I think would be a really smart direction that it sounds like you're already kind of moving in is like we were saying, corporate events, stuff with like Rady's Children Hospital. For a couple reasons. One, I think you'd have a very big impact. It's just easier to access a larger group of people. Um, but I also think from a business standpoint, that's a really solid way of kind of hey, we have a contract with the hospital, and we every 3 months we put on one of these things, and you know what I mean, like, and then you can scale that to different hospitals, you can scale that to different types of companies that it's in a similar deal. Because I don't throw events, so this is not speaking from my own experience, but what I would imagine is very difficult about the event throwing thing is everyone is sort of like, all right, here we go. We got to market it. We got to hope people will buy tickets. We got to, the venue's going to be okay. We're going to have all these things, and
Mhm.
not to say that's wrong. I mean, I also show up to these events all the time. So I love that they exist. But I always think from the perspective of the entrepreneur. I'm like, that's a tough way of like kind of having to rethink it every single time and kind of like be a wedding planner. Would you say 4 times in 2 weeks? Is that what you said?
I have two events, two coming up in the next 3 weeks.
Right, right, right. So I
Yeah,
mean, it's a lot. But
yeah,
I yeah,
that's why the standardizing is really
yeah,
important because it's
totally.
just having the framework and like the organization behind it is going to help move quicker. It helps me move faster versus having to like go be ground up every single time.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's awesome. So, do you want to tell people maybe where to reach you so they can find you, where they can
Yeah.
sign up for an event, check out your art?
Yeah, totally. Thank you. So, on Instagram, you could find me at my old handle, which is Fungi, Funkii. She's going to be getting a revamp soon, but then my website is sarahrosecreations.com. So I have some of my products on there, like the actual art that I make, some of the pieces that I sell online, and then I have more of my workshops there. So you could find the workshops that we're offering on my website. You could buy your ticket there directly. And then too, like if anyone that's listening to this wants to come, send me a DM and I'll bring you in. We'll get you a discount code because if you are friends of Jordan, then you're friends of mine.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Sit tight for a little bit after I'm done recording because I just want to ask you a couple questions. But
Yeah.
last thing, thank you all for coming today. This is Mind Body Mushroom brought to you by WindanSea Coffee. And you can check us out at WindanSeaCoffee.com. Use code MindBody for 25% off. Yeah, and we'll be posting this probably next week. So stay tuned for that. So thank you all.
Thank you.